Throughout the Cold War, Soviet posters stood as bold, colorful, and often emotionally charged visual tools of ideological warfare. More than mere advertisements or artworks, they were weapons of persuasion, designed to mold the minds of citizens, rally support for state policies, and present an idealized image of Soviet life and values. The history of Soviet posters reveals not only the evolution of graphic art in the USSR but also the shifting goals, fears, and ambitions of the Soviet regime during its confrontation with the capitalist West. Revolutionary roots, birth of Soviet propaganda art. Soviet poster culture was born in the aftermath of the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, when the new communist regime sought to consolidate power and mobilize the masses. Many citizens were illiterate, making visual communication especially powerful. Early Soviet posters from the 1920s, crafted by revolutionary artists like Dmitry Moore and L. Lisitsky, used bold lines, dynamic compositions, and limited text to convey messages of class struggle, worker solidarity, and anti-capitalist resistance. These posters were influenced by constructivism and avant-garde aesthetics, reflecting the experimental energy of the early Soviet Union. Slogans like "Workers of the World, Unite!" and "Down with the Bourgeoisie!" were paired with striking red and black images of muscular workers and villains in top hats. Stalinist era, the rise of socialist realism. In the 1930s, as Joseph Stalin consolidated power, Soviet poster art shifted dramatically. The avant-garde was replaced by socialist realism, a state-mandated style emphasizing heroic, idealized depictions of workers, soldiers, and farmers. Posters celebrated industrialization, collectivized agriculture, and loyalty to the party. Portraits of Stalin often loomed over workers in factories or children in schools, promoting the cult of personality. The poster became a tool not just of education but of obedience and fear. It reminded citizens of their duty to the state and the dangers of sabotage, laziness, or dissent. With slogans like "Thank you, Comrade Stalin, for our happy childhood," posters reinforced a narrative of state benevolence and inevitable Soviet progress. World War II, rallying the Soviet spirit. During the Great Patriotic War, 1941 to 1945, Soviet posters became central to the war effort. Artists created powerful imagery to boost morale, encourage enlistment, and vilify Nazi Germany. One of the most iconic wartime posters, "Motherland Calls," depicted a stern woman raising a sword and rallying citizens to defend the Soviet Union. These posters employed emotional appeals, patriotic symbolism, and stark contrasts between good Soviet heroes and evil, fascist invaders. They were instrumental in maintaining public resolve during the devastating German invasion. The Cold War, ideological battles on paper. After World War II, as the Cold War intensified, Soviet posters were turned outward, to combat Western influence and capitalism. The Soviet state produced a torrent of anti-American, anti-NATO, and anti-nuclear imagery. Posters warned of the dangers of imperialism, celebrated Soviet space achievements, and promoted peace through communism. Notable Cold War themes included anti-Americanism. Posters depicted the U.S. as a land of racial violence, poverty, and warmongering. Uncle Sam was often shown dripping in oil or clutching bombs. Soviet superiority. Art celebrated Soviet science, education, and the space race, often comparing it favorably against Western decay. Peace and disarmament. Ironically, while the USSR built its nuclear arsenal, it issued posters advocating for world peace and the end of Western militarism. The art style became more polished and realistic, but always optimistic and triumphant. The cosmonaut became a new heroic figure, especially after Yuri Gagarin's flight in 1961. Everyday propaganda. Posters in daily life. Soviet posters weren't confined to politics or war, they infiltrated daily life. Citizens were constantly reminded to work hard, avoid alcoholism, follow safety protocols, and support socialist values. Posters encouraged hygiene, family values, and loyalty to the state. Some posters promoted the new Soviet person, idealized as strong, educated, gender-equal, and devoted to building communism. Even children's posters reinforced state values, portraying school as a patriotic duty. Decline and legacy. By the 1980s, under leaders like Brezhnev and eventually Gorbachev, the Soviet Union began to stagnate, and so did its propaganda. Posters remained a part of life, but they lost their earlier power and artistic vibrancy. Under perestroika and glasnost, criticism of the state became more common, and the once mighty posters were often seen as relics of a decaying regime. With the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, The era of official propaganda posters ended. But their legacy remains, preserved in museums, studied in universities, and collected around the world as symbols of a unique intersection of art, ideology, and power. Soviet posters were more than just artwork, they were ideological weapons deployed in the global Cold War struggle. Through vibrant colors, powerful symbols, and commanding slogans, they shaped how generations of Soviet citizens viewed their world, their enemies, and themselves. Today they stand as both a warning and a testament to the power of images in the hands of the state.